Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during this discussion, please type them into the chat box in your Zoom control panel. We'll bring them at the end of this discussion. Today, we are having an interesting fireside chat with Ms. Shalini Warrier, Executive Director and Business Head, Retail Federal Bank, on digital transformation in financial services, its challenges and opportunities. I welcome Shalini ma'am to this wholeheartedly. The session will be moderated by Professor Jofi Thomas and Professor Kampar Abidi, both from IIM Kozhikode. Welcoming both of you, sir. I'm glad to welcome Professor Radhakrishna Pillai, Head of CDIIT, and Professor MP Sebastian, Member of Advisory Council, also to this event. Welcome, sir. Now, I request Professor Radhakrishna Pillai, sir, to give a brief introduction.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this Fireside chat organized by the Center for Digital Innovation and Transformation, IIM Kozhikode. So we have the distinguished chief guest of this event, Ms. Shalini ji, the Executive Director and Business Head of Retail at Federal Bank. We have two moderators, Professor Jofi and Professor Kampar from IIM Kozhikode, and our Advisory Council member, Professor Sebastian, is also present. Okay, it is a matter of proud and privilege to welcome you all to this event in this evening. As you are aware of, this center was inaugurated last December, and this is the first formal event organized by the center. This way, we are fortunate to have such a distinguished guest for this occasion. We are all aware that digital transformation is transforming our lives, especially in the post-pandemic days. Almost all sectors are getting transformed, and financial sector is not an exemption. And today, you know that because of the heavy use of digital technology, something called fintech has emerged. People call ABCD of fintech is artificial intelligence, blockchain, cloud computing, and big data analytics. So this evening we got such an exemplary personality with a lot of experience in digital transformation in terms of leading the transformation and executing the transformation. The popular bank, that is a Federal Bank. Federal Bank is one of the pioneers of adapting the digital technology and really reaping the benefits of using the technology. And she is the Executive Director of Federal Bank since 2020. And she joined the Federal Bank in 2015 as the Chief Operating Officer in charge of operational excellence and digital innovation. And she is a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, and she was the topper in 1989. She brings with her 3 decades of banking experience. So today, in all sense, we are really fortunate to have her to share her insight through this fireside chat. And we have also 2 of our distinguished colleagues, Professor Jofi Thomas and Professor Kampar. Professor Jofi is a faculty member in the marketing management area. He brings with his experience in the IT industry, followed by teaching, research, and consulting experience in academic over 2 decades. His areas of interest are marketing strategy, branding, managing business markets, key account management, incubation, innovation, and entrepreneurship. On behalf of this center and each one of you, I extend a very warm welcome to Shalini ji first, then Professor Jofi, and Professor Kampar is a faculty colleague in the finance and accounting control area in IIM Kozhikode. Prior to that, he worked as a quantitative analyst in a boutique investment bank and an independent research advisory firm to asset management companies. He obtained his PhD from IIM Ahmedabad and MBA from IIT Delhi. His current research interests are in the area of investment management and contemporary financial intermediation. So on behalf of the center and each one of you, I extend a very warm welcome to Professor Kamba. We have Professor Sebastian here. He is a faculty colleague in information system area. He is also one of the advisory council members of this center. On behalf of the center and each one of you, I extend a very warm welcome to Professor Sebastian. So now over to you, moderators and Shalini madam. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Pillai. And good evening, Madam Shalini and esteemed audience. We have already 135 members here in the attending panel. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining. It's indeed a great opportunity for us, for the members of the IMK community, to be with Madam Shalini to understand the digital journey. Now, as Professor Radhakrishna Pillai was introducing, Madam Shalini, we understand, completed her CA in 1989. So before we start the questions, I would like to set a context, and we are especially looking at developments in the last 3 decades. And it is in these 3 decades, Madam Shalini has been in the industry, banking and financial services, and where most of the activities in IT and digital transformation has really happened so far. So hence, we have really the right person to take us through this entire period. And now, when we speak of digital technologies, what comes to mind, if you really go back, it is the landline telephone. And then the telephonic digital switching came, PCOs came in the country in maybe 80s. Telecom was the biggest digital revolution of those times. Then, in 1980s, we had the PCs coming in. Before that, we had mainframes, but it was not really widely used, not so popular across the entire masses. But PCs came, and the computers gradually towards 90s and 2000, the client server computing, companies of Microsoft, Intel, etc. So the world over, we entered into the personal computing. And when you look at business transformation, 1990s is when the IT was used essentially for dramatic business transformation, which was called business process reengineering. In all these times, IT was just seen more as a productivity tool. How to do business better than before, how to do it better. Now, there is a different kind of digital transformation that we are speaking today, which came with the arrival of internet, in late 90s. Popularization, happened more so in 2000. And the penetration of consumer internet is happening today. We have, in India, 60 crore of the people actually having that kind of subscription. And we are hoping that in the next few years, it will turn to 90 crores. And then we have the technologies of social media, analytics, and cloud. To top it, we have sensors and industrial internet, as Jeet chose to call it, in the beginning of 2000. And these technologies offer opportunities to not really improve productivity of businesses, but to transform businesses. And there, the transformation essentially is not also happening in a particular industry. This is cutting across industries, and we are actually, it is actually making many supply chains actually converge. So hence, we are looking at an ecosystem around consumption of certain, products, certain customer needs, and production ecosystems are converging. Consumption and production ecosystems are converged, and there is digital ecosystems actually getting emerged. Now, this has happened, beginning 2002, and then startups, they offered so much of innovation opportunities that startups flourished across the world. Now, we call them tech startups. In fact, there were many startups before that, but we call only those startups which were born after 2000 today as tech startups, right? And these tech startups now, in India has also taken its place in this growing startup ecosystem, whereby, last year, Hurun Research ranked us, among countries as number 3rd after US, China. India comes with some 51 unicorns in 2021 compared to 396 and 299, 277 for China. In this entire startup space, one of the early movers was the startups in financial services industry, which we today call as fintech. Along with, actually, if you see in our own country, fintech and e-commerce actually kind of came almost at a similar time. Fintech supported that industry by enabling the payment, and they kind of flourished. Now, this interesting story is where I think our Madam Shalini has been located all her career, and she has been kind of traversing this journey through, I am sure that through the business process engineering and later through the internet technologies, and then now I'm in the last few years collaborating with those fintech companies in enabling the growth of Federal Bank. Now here there is an issue when this disruption is happening. There are these new startups which are coming, which we call unicorn, and then some of them are already listed like Paytm. And there are the incumbent, banks, essentially the financial services where through the banking system. And then there is this also competition between the banks and the new fintech companies. And then there are collaboration opportunities. So some can see it as competition, others could see it as collaboration. And the point is there are large opportunities here. And that is where we come to today's fireside chat. Here we have with us Madam Shalini Warrier, and she has been spearheading the digital transformation efforts at Federal Bank as Chief Operating Officer from 2015 and Executive Director from 2020, and also heading the retail, the key part of Federal Bank, which is the retail banking. And on behalf of FIMK and Center for Digital Innovation, thank you, Madam, for being there. And to get started, so Madam, so this context, I was just trying to set the context. Can you take us through this 3 decades and also your digital journey as you set foot, in financial services in 1989, and how has been your digital journey? And one more question along with that, as to what has been most satisfying, kind of experience, initiatives in this entire journey? So that is, over to you, Madam.
Thank you very much. Honor, pleasure, privilege to be here with this august audience. It's, IIM Kozhikode holds a special place in my heart because it's the IIM in my home state of Kerala. So that helps a lot. And I've had the privilege of coming to the campus and seeing it. And when IIM Kozhikode does something like the Center for Digital Innovation and Transformation, I can visualize how effective it will be. So it's definitely an honor and privilege for me to be here. Thank you very much for having me here. So I think you've set the context very well. The last 30 years have been a lot happening in this whole space. But I think it's in the world of digital, in the world of innovation, in the world of fintechs, honestly, I think 30 years is a very, very, very long time. Every day, literally, one sees so much happening around. So I'll try and address your question with more relevance to the immediate past, because I think that may resonate better with the audience, because 30 years is a long time. And I'll split it into 2 parts. I'll talk about personally what has kind of excited me and what I've been doing about it. And as an organization, what Federal Bank has been doing, so that I can kind of give you both the perspectives. So personally for me, I've been working very, very closely with anything to do with digital, in particular in the last 6 to 8 years. This was probably the main trigger for me actually kind of, leaving my previous organization where, I was having a great time with Standard Chartered Bank. I was working in Dubai. I had done various roles within Standard Chartered Bank, but there came this opportunity to come and do something very different. And the reason I kind of chose this and came to do this was because of two things. One, India was changing a lot from a digital banking perspective. Anything to do with innovation in the financial services industry was actually happening in India and continues to happen in India. This was the time around which Aadhaar being used for various purposes was gaining in traction. The mobile banking revolution was happening. Data packages were available. So this whole, trinity, as they call it, Jan Dhan, Aadhaar, mobile, JAM trinity was all happening. NPCI, an organization, National Payments Corporation of India, NPCI, an organization which we all respect, was gaining a lot in traction. In fact, UPI was still a few years away at that time, but still there was a lot happening on the innovation front from a payments perspective. So this entire thing kind of, worked very appropriately for me because it was something that I was very keen on, and that kind of triggered my move from, Standard Chartered Bank, a multinational bank with presence in human number of countries, to a federal bank over here. Through the journey, however, what I have come to realize is a couple of things actually, and this has kind of kept me hopefully on the edge of technology and the edge of this whole digital transformation from a personal standpoint. The first is, I think there is no limit to the amount of learning, unlearning, and relearning one has to do. What I knew yesterday, I have to unlearn today. What I've learned today, I have to relearn tomorrow. It's a huge process of learning and unlearning. Things like use cases that we do with UPI, Unified Payment Interface. What we can do with account aggregator, which is the new tool in the country. What we can do with the Open Network for Digital Commerce that is going to come. What we can do with OCE and the Credit Enablement Network. So there's so much of learning there. And what I realized is unless one is at the cutting edge of learning, unlearning some of the kind of erstwhile practices one has or thoughts one has, and continually relearning, it would not happen. It would not be successful. Even now, I consider myself a learner. I still do a lot of courses in digital, courses in fintechs, courses in various things to keep myself abreast of what is happening. I also extensively do what is called reverse mentoring. I have kind of no issues with picking up the phone or getting, one of my young stars who's just come out of college to come and sit with me and take me through what the metaverse is all about and what we can do as opportunities on the metaverse. So I think personally for me, the digital journey has been really about the mindset of learning, unlearning, and relearning, the mindset of reverse mentoring, the humility to accept that you would not know everything and therefore be able to approach people and learn. So that's been a part of my personal journey and something that I teach. I work with my teams extensively on to say that unless you're out there learning what is happening, you will never know what the benefits of digital are and where you can put in these benefits. So that's more from a personal standpoint. But I think what's more interesting, I would think, is what we've been doing in Federal Bank from a digital transformation perspective and the journey we've been making in Federal Bank. Just for the benefit of the audience, I'm sure most of them know Federal Bank, but just a few kind of tidbits about Federal Bank. It's a leading private sector bank, publicly owned. We don't have any founders who are owners, etc. So we're very, very publicly held. Yes, we are headquartered in Kerala. We have a dominant market share in Kerala, but we have a presence across the whole of India. We have about 1,280 odd branches. A large part of them are in Kerala, no doubt, but we have a very significant presence in states like Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, etc. A couple of other tidbits that are important for us. We have a dominant market share in the non-resident business, nearly 7% market share in the non-resident business. We also have a dominant market share in the inward remittances area. Nearly 20% of India's remittances are processed by Federal Bank. So that just gives you a sense of Federal Bank and where our, we just declared our results yesterday for the quarter ended 30th June, and touch wood, we had a good set of results. But the transformation from a Federal Bank perspective on digital is something that started a few years back. Probably around 2015, 2016 is when we first took the step to say that, the world is going digital. There are lots of opportunities out there. If we tuck away digital into either a part of our technology team or a part of our product team, we would probably not be able to gain advantage of what's happening in the economy. So it was around that time that the bank took a decision to actually carve out digital and make it a separate unit by itself. We actually, pulled a set of people and created a digital banking team, and we call them actually the Digital Center of Excellence. So we kind of turned the terminology around also to give them a mindset to say this is all about Center of Excellence. So we created the Digital Center of Excellence, and that team has since then been at the forefront of running a whole host of capabilities on digital, a lot of innovation, a lot of data-to-day stuff that they do. The tenets that we kept in mind, and I think that is embodied in our philosophy, what we say and practice is digital at the fore, human at the core. What we really mean by that is, from a digital standpoint, we make sure we have all the capabilities that customers need, whether it's on mobile banking, internet banking, whether it's for retail individuals like you and me, for corporates. We will ensure that we have all the digital capability, and we will continually invest in that capability. At the core of it, we do recognize, however, that human relationships matter a lot, and therefore we do have our branches to make sure that they render extremely good service to customers who need to be in the branches for various things. So digital at the fore, human at the core is really our philosophy. And the practices we do is, and I'm giving you the generic practices that we do, there will be many more, but the three most important ones are, no digital transformation is possible unless one involves all employees. It starts really from making sure that we're involving all our employees, and therefore we invest a lot in making sure our employees are ambassadors of our digital banking. We invest in making sure they're able to understand the technologies, learn from that, and we communicate extensively with them. There is upward communication, downward communication, side-to-side communication. So employees are a very critical component in our journey for excellence. The second is listening to customers, and I think that is something that everybody does, and we make sure we practice it. Just as one example of that, something that we hold very, very close to our heart is, what are the kind of comments and ratings that customers are giving us on Play Store and App Store for our mobile banking. It's a key performance indicator, not for me and my team of people, to say that the rating has to be kept at a certain level. Comments have to be addressed immediately when they come up, and that's where we listen to the voice of the customer. The third is, we are very clear that digital is not an end in itself. Digital is a method and a methodology and a philosophy to get better business results. And the business results will come from customer convenience, will come from employee productivity, from various things. So we drive a set of metrics through our digital team, which are fairly hard-nosed metrics to say, what is it that you're doing from a digital standpoint that is enabling us to become better as an organization, become closer to our goal of the most admired bank? So the journey really has been along this for both me personally and for me as and for Federal Bank as an organization. Today, as we speak, the digital team is a very strong, structural part of the organization, and does a lot of, stuff that is at the cutting edge of technology. So I think that's really a part of the answer to one of your the first part of your question. I think you had another question, which was, what was the most satisfying and impactful initiatives that we've done? Oh, that list is quite endless. There are so many things, but I'll just pick two of them so that I kind of think. And I'm talking again of the last 3-4 years. If you ask me this question next year, I'm sure the list will be different because there's so much happening in this space. But I'll pick two of them. One, we did something very tactical during the COVID period, and I think we took pride in having done that. So when COVID first came out, there was so much happening in March of 2020, where customers were inconvenienced, etc. One of the things we realized was that there were certain requirements for customers to come to the branches. If they needed a gold loan, if they wanted to renew their deposits, if they wanted to do some transactions that needed the branch intervention. But we had a challenge in that we couldn't service more than 5 customers at a time at the branch. And therefore, we ended up seeing customers waiting outside to get into the branch. So we designed and rolled out in fairly quick time a capability called Fed Swagat, which was really about being able to book an appointment and come to the branch at the appointed time. So that helped us streamline the process and gave customers the confidence that they wouldn't have to wait outside. It was something we did very quickly. We saw a huge usage. Obviously, post that, a couple of months back, we actually withdrew that capability because we don't need that any longer. But the reason I picked that as an example is, and why it was most satisfying, was because it was thinking on the feet for a requirement that came up quite suddenly and served its purpose. So I think that was one example. Another example we're proud of, which if you go to our website, etc., you will see, we have a chatbot called Fedi. He's a cute little boy. Does a lot of transactions, does a lot of interactions with customers, as something we are continually using artificial intelligence as the backbone. And so I think those would what I would rank. This is not to say, I mean, there are so many that I can list out, but I think these two would rank, I think. And the reason I kind of picked and chose these was they're really reflective of the fact that the bank is very agile and adaptive to what is happening out there.
Right. That gives an idea about your journey, especially in Federal Bank, right, from 2015 onwards.
Yes.
Shalini, if you look at last 7 years there, in Federal Bank, and when you came in, maybe you were in the early stage of taking up digital initiatives, right? Digital transformation initiatives. So if you split this 7 years, so consider, say, phase 1, phase 2. So, and you would have had different metrics, right, in the initial phase and later and now. So can you give us some idea, right, when you initially started, how did you have, certain, long-term, low-hanging fruits, which you kind of, moved on and then you built, etc.
Yeah. So you're right. Like I keep saying, it's a journey. And therefore things evolve, and we look at it virtually every year. We'll rewind our metrics to make sure that they're more relevant and stand relevant. But if I were to break it into phases, I would break it into kind of two main phases. The first phase, when we introduced kind of digital banking and created this concept that I spoke about, which is a separate team of people focusing on digital banking. Our first, in that phase, our metrics were primarily around, as you call, the low-hanging fruits, how do I migrate customers out from the branch into digital? How do I make sure that instead of coming into a branch to do a fund transfer, they use the mobile banking? How do I make sure they are using digital means rather than physical means for applying for any product that they want? So it was more around product and innovation around that pieces of it, which was, as you call, the low-hanging fruits. That is again a journey, and it continues. We continually innovate on that. We continue things. So we introduce things like digital account opening, for example, digital ways of buying investment products, digital ways of buying insurance. All of that is part of what we call the phase, which is more digital thing. And like we said, we reset the metrics on them. Somewhere around 2017, 2018, we actually sat down with the board of directors and had a very detailed discussion around where is the whole ecosystem going, what is happening in this whole ecosystem. And that's where a lot of discussion took place about fintechs. So I would probably consider that as another phase of our digital journey, where the recognition came that fintechs are a very critical part of the ecosystem. We need to collaborate with them rather than compete with them. And therefore, it is imperative for us to build the architecture from a financial ecosystem perspective that we can approach fintechs and collaborate with them. So it was in 2017 that we started work on that. Our first step was to build the technology architecture that we needed to make sure that we had the API banking gateway and the APIs hosted on it. Once we got the APIs in place, we approached various partners to do lending, to do payments. And today we've reached a stage where we have about 300 APIs. We work with about 50 fintech partners. The APIs are across the space, from lending to payments to account opening to virtually everything you can think of. We are the leading partner from a bank perspective for entities like Epify and Jupiter, which open savings accounts, for OneCard, which does credit cards, a range of, for Rupeek, which does gold loans, a New Street Finance, which does microfinance. So we are the leading partner for virtually all these entities. So I'd consider digital banking as one and the fintech partnership as another phase in our journey. Today, as we speak, we have both units segregated and working separately. The fintech team is a business unit devoted to making sure that we make business benefits out of all our partnerships. They're focused on getting new partners, working with existing partners to refine products, to improve products, and they have literally KPIs of their own on things like balance sheet and P&L. Another part of the bank, which also kind of works with me, is on the digital banking. That team looks at metrics like, how many, what kind of capabilities are there at the front end from an account opening perspective, buying new products, what is the next capability out there that needs to be done, what is it that we need to innovate on, whether it's an experiment in blockchain, whether it's an experiment in artificial intelligence. So both units work extremely, focused on their set of metrics. But I think the broader point I'm making is, unless an organization like ours gives it the focus and attention, has a separate set of people devoted for these, and is continually working on refining the metrics, we would find ourselves not being very successful. Digital, as I keep saying, digital for the sake of digital is not useful. It cannot be a hobby for banks like us, or for anybody for that matter. And therefore, you've got to give it that focus and attention.
Yeah, that is really nice to hear, in the sense that companies are trying to gauge, how much effort is required, how much investment is required, right? And here, you said in 2017, you had this focus on fintech partnerships. And I see, also you were from the annual report as well. It comes that, you were growing without the branches, physical branches during this time, right? The growth in the number of customers came more through this digital route.
Yes.
So were there specific targets set, that, you would have so many customers per month, etc., in terms of those metrics, or by this year?
Yes, we do have metrics. We do have metrics around how many accounts are opened, which are, so for every 100 accounts opened, how many of them are digital is a very key metric, So we're running at about 80% being digital, the balance 20% being physical. How do we get 80 to become 85, 88? So now, digital penetration in the number of accounts is a metric. We also measure how many, digitally originated loans have been there. So yes, we have a range of metrics that we do. We agree a certain set of metrics with the board, and we have sub-metrics. But the entire focus is on making sure, if we're doing 100 units of something, how do I make sure out of the 100 units, 80 become digital, 90 become digital, etc. That's how we measure it.
So then, connecting this to the business results. So has it been less costly than the physical route collaboration?
Absolutely. I'll give you just one example to kind of drive that point in. Or maybe I'll give you two examples. One is, traditionally accounts used to be opened in a very manual fashion. I'm talking about savings accounts like you and I would open. The branch would take the papers from the customer, the branch would check all the papers, then the branch would scan it and send it to a central team. The central team would then data enter it into the system, etc., etc., etc. And then the card gets produced, sent, etc. We transformed that completely to say that because there is this capability of Aadhaar, because UIDAI has such wonderful capability, why do we need to do this? And therefore now when the customer walks in, it's a biometric authenticated process. The data is pulled from Aadhaar automatically with customer consent. It's pre-populated completely. Only additional information that we need is taken from the customer, all paperless, and the whole account opening process is seamless. So we've disintermediated a lot of the people while improving our risks and controls on it. So that's one example. The other example is last year we launched our credit card for the first time. And today our entire credit card proposition is digital only. We don't even have a physical application form. We have decided not to print a physical application form for credit cards. It's completely digital. It's offered to customers in a digital fashion. All the data is taken from the customer and it's pulled out in various ways. And the card actually gets delivered to the customer in a virtual form in his mobile banking, and he can start using it from literally that same instant for e-commerce. Yes, the physical plastic is sent to him thereafter so that he can use it for other purposes, but day one, he can use it, and he may choose never to use the never to use the physical plastic because he's happy with the virtual card. So these are just two examples of where we've gone digital, and each of these, if the branch was doing it, it would cost, let's say, X amount, but we have statistics and which we continually validate, which says that when you do it through digital, it's actually down to less than 10% of that X. So that that contrast we've seen, and we've reinvested all that money into higher business growth. So if you look at the business growth that has happened from 2015 or so to about 2022, in spite of the fact that we've not opened more branches, our business has grown some 2-3 times over, right? When I say business, I mean our lending, our deposits, everything has grown. Could not have been possible without the interventions from a digital perspective.
Right. So, you gave us an indication that there is a kind of, we can take it as a kind of 10% reduction due to the digital intervention and transformation that you have brought into these activities.
I think it's, sorry, what I meant was if X was the account opening cost when done physical,
right.
When you do it digital, it's about 10% of X. So right. It's a factor of literally that. And each of the transactions will have a different metric, but we measure it very carefully.
So, at the same time, when you are actually scaling this up, right, with the collaborations and the fintech, also the partners also get the advantage. There is a possibility of, further improving this 10, sure. to 12 and 13 kind of.
Absolutely. Scale economics will always come into play as we scale up, because some part of it has been an investment that we made. So with fintech partners, for example, the API gateway that we had invested in, the APIs that we had to develop is a one-time investment we've had to make. As I get multiple partners on board, as I get larger business from these partners, I don't need to keep investing. Yes, I may need to scale up a little bit, but it's not that same underlying investment. So scale economies are starting to play out. Every subsequent partner coming on the platform is coming at a lower cost of operations for me when compared to the first partner.
So, we are seeing that, in the last few years, your efforts are getting recognized in the marketplace, awards in terms of the, best digital bank, number 2, the best mid-sized bank, by KPMG for the last 2 years. So hence, is this leading to a first mover advantage in the field that, over time, it gives an advantage for Federal Bank to, really grow national? So yeah. From a kind of South Indian, is that also on?
So we are currently quite national in character. We are definitely quite national in character. So as an example, the 2 partnerships we have with Epify and Jupiter, which open about, between the 2, we open about 11 to 12,000 accounts per day. Those accounts are coming from anywhere in India, Professor. It could come from a Gurgaon, Hyderabad, Bangalore. I mean, all over the place, Pune, everywhere. The salaried millennial, the one who's digitally native is opening it. To your broader point, absolutely. I think this is giving us an advantage, particularly in terms of, some of the innovative stuff that we're doing with the government of India, the innovative stuff we're doing with the RBI Innovation Hub, the innovative stuff we're doing with some fintech partners where we're experimenting with many things. Federal Bank has become kind of the first bank that that a fintech partner could approach, because we already have the APIs in place, etc. So yes, it is giving us a first mover advantage. It is giving us the fact that we can reach out to a larger part of the geographies. Absolutely.
So the other related question is about the target market or the target customer groups. So when you started initially the enhanced digital experience, was it the millennials and who were the target group, and in the second phase?
Yeah. So the first part was generally our own customer base, which is the normal. I mean, our customer base is a slightly older customer base, the more 40, 45-year-old customer. Who's kind of been working for 10, 15 years and is well settled in his life, etc., looking for a certain kind of an experience. That's the kind of profile Federal Bank normally attracts, and that's the kind of profile we were working with in the first phase, where we were migrating them from physical to digital channels. We were getting them to transact more digitally. Through the fintech collaborations and the fintech partnerships that we have in place right now, the profile of customers that are coming is different. That profile is now the salaried millennial, the customer who's probably 24, 25, first job, born with literally a mobile in his or her hand. That's the profile we're now coming through these fintech partners. And I think it's appropriate that, the fintech partner collaborations that we have attracts a very different profile of the customer. So this is in addition to what we're doing. Our other customer base is absolutely loyal, valuable, etc. to us. So I see this more as complementary and not competitive. It's not like, my organic business has come down and this has gone up. Both have coexisted. Both are chugging along quite well and are additively giving me business.
Right. And one more clarification question, you mentioned about building capabilities to stay afloat and, even further, grow the advantage. Now you have, mentioned that there are two centers. Initially, you set up a center to enhance the experience. Later, the, fintech partnerships, collaborations to continuously update. So can you give us some idea as to how many people, how did you, what kind of people, is it the regular employees or new set of, is it the techies?
Yeah.
You coming in and the kind of training and the culture that you have kind of created, because that's what will kind of
correct.
play.
Yeah, so I think in terms of the attributes that we look for in these kind of people who come into this, and we've taken most of them internally because I think we have the right talent set. The attributes we look for are really people who have to some extent a questioning mind. They don't accept status quo. They don't accept the fact that this is how things will be. They question everything. So they come with that mindset which says, okay, I don't need to accept this as the gospel truth. I need to check this out. I need to find alternatives, etc. So that's one thing. A mindset of people looking outward rather than inward, which means they approach more and more customers for feedback. They look at what other banks are doing. They look at what non-banks are doing. What is Apple doing in the payments industry? What is Google Pay doing? So they're more outward focused and they look more external, etc. They display huge amounts of agility, because one of the big things in this whole place is agility and making sure that you're at the cutting edge of technology, cutting edge of innovation. Having said that, overlaying all this is the team has to come with a very strong understanding of risk and compliance. We are ultimately a bank. We are in the business of taking money from customers, so and lending it to others. So risk and compliance is very, very important as it is for most industries, but how the banking industry in particular is going. So, the profile of people we look for is somebody who has a good understanding of risk. So that's the kind of profile of the people we look for. Both teams have sufficient number of people they work collaboratively with technology, with other partners inside the bank as well as outside the bank. So we've never found a challenge in finding the right kind of people, internal as well as where required external. So I think people is not such a big concern for us. I think where we've had to spend a fair amount of time, energy, and thinking is: are we getting given the growing threat of cybersecurity, given the growing threat of data privacy, data regulations? We want to make sure we are perfect in what we do as an organization, and therefore that's an area where we've had to spend some amount of time and attention. We've had to make sure that we have the right talented people in those spaces who are looking at what is it that can mitigate the risk of from a cybersecurity perspective. So as an example, we are probably the only bank in India which has actually used something called an IBM product called Trustier in our mobile banking application, which makes it very, very secure. I don't think there's any other bank that does it. And Trustier is really high from a security standpoint, and we did in our application quite some time back. So cybersecurity is definitely an area which we've made considerable investments in from a technology perspective and a people perspective, in addition to obviously product development, process changes, etc.
So, this team 1 and team 2 together would be like, almost 100 kind of people?
Oh, probably about 45, 50 of them. I think I don't remember the exact number, but they're fairly large. Yeah.
So do you expect this team to actually grow in the,
absolutely. Yes.
So in terms of size?
Yes, both teams are growing in size as we speak. They're growing in capabilities as we speak. So, for example, within the fintech area, we've now created specializations to say there will be one team looking at savings accounts, one team looking at credit cards, one team looking at personal loans, so that we've given them some specializations on things that they can work with collaborators on. Within digital, for example, we've created specialization. We've said one team will look at anything to do with Fed Mobile, and which is our mobile banking solution, anybody to do FedNet, which is our internet banking solution, somebody who's continuously innovating on things like UPI. So we've done a lot of specializations, but the team size, honestly, it doesn't matter. It's really what is the mindset that they have when they approach the problem.
Right. So the next question is like, you have to influence the other 10,000 employees, right, in the organization, in also getting them, moving from, getting accustomed to the new technologies, educating customers on them. So hence, how, is this 100 people also responsible for kind of, getting them on?
Yes, yes. So a couple of things we've done in this area. So a part of this team includes what we call digital banking ambassadors. We have digital banking ambassadors who are based out of all our zone, like out of our main centers. We have a couple of people only, but they become kind of the digital banking evangelists for that particular zone, for that particular region, etc. But we've also taken one step forward and said in each branch, we will identify somebody who's like a digital banking agent. It's not his, I mean, he's not a part of the digital banking team. He's a part of the branch team, but he or she is somebody who we know has a good aptitude for digital. So we've identified them as digital banking angels. So typically when we roll out any capability, the way we do it is we first offer it to staff and we get staff to kind of use it and tell us what their feedback has been. Once we're comfortable, that staff is comfortable with it, understands it, then we roll it out to customers. So that way we ensure that we get the staff kind of very engaged in the process of innovation, in the process of deployment. They then become ambassadors for it. And they then, are happy to kind of take customers through this process.
Thank you so much.
Professor, we are almost out of time.
We're just moving to the next part. Thank you so much. This gives us an idea of the cultural challenge and also how do you take it forward. Now, Professor Kamba will take it forward.
So, Shalini, we are almost out of time in whatever allocated time we had for this discussion. We'll move on to the questions which are being posed by the audience. And there is one question which has been posted by Mr. Ramachandran, which says that there's this company called Alipay, which later changed into Ant Financial. Alipay was part of Alibaba Group, e-commerce, and Alipay, and then all different kind of businesses that Ant Financial got into. The amount of value that business created in a very short period of time, so from 2014 to let's say 5 to 6 years, hundreds of billions of dollars of value was created by that company. What kind of opportunities do we see in India for these kind of technology-oriented companies to completely disrupt the sector and unlock huge potential value?
So I think the way I would position it is in two parts. One, I think clearly from an innovation standpoint, these fintechs do have the ability to kind of do a lot of disruption, and we're already seeing signs of it. If you go back, if you look at UPI as an instrument, it's really PhonePe, Google Pay, Paytm that commands the market share from a UPI perspective. Banks like us, yes, we provide the underlying rails for some of these, but the user experience, the user relates to a GPay, the user relates to a PhonePe, etc. So you're already seeing some signs of that from a fintech kind of perspective, and there are many more examples of that. If you look at what a company called Open is doing in SME banking, in the small and medium enterprises banking, if you look at what Cred is doing in the credit card space, if you look at many examples of where fintechs are coming in with innovation, fintechs are coming in with agility, with a strong understanding of customer needs, etc. But there is another part of it which I think where India will be, and reassuringly different from what Alipay, etc. is, which is the fact that to a large extent, Reserve Bank of India is clearly very involved in this journey of fintech. I'm not saying China is not involved. I'm just saying that Reserve Bank of India does ensure, and this is to keep depositors' money intact, to make sure borrowers are not unduly kind of victimized by them. There are a lot of railroads and controls that RBI has put in place. RBI works in a very collaborative manner with banks. And I'll give you one example, two examples of how RBI is doing this so that people appreciate what the RBI is doing. There has been a lot of noise around the fact that digital lending apps are getting proliferated in the country, etc. But sometime in November last year, RBI actually issued out a draft white paper on some of the intended regulations around digital lending. And they were open, and it was open for everybody to comment on, everybody to give feedback on. And the industry as a whole gave feedback. Banks gave feedback, fintechs gave feedback, consumers gave feedback. And taking all that into account, it's quite imminent in the next few weeks, if not days, RBI will come out with a paper on digital lending, which gives very clear railroads around what we can do, etc. That's one example of what RBI is doing. The second example is that RBI themselves have set up a fully owned subsidiary called RBI Innovation Hub, which is working with banks on innovation. They're doing something on, for example, we are doing some work with them on agri-financing. We are looking at doing some work with them on dairy farmers and what we can do with them. They're already doing work with multiple banks on a POC for blockchain. So the point I'm giving you is that, yes, fintechs have agility, fintechs have a whole host of investment in the user experience, but I think consumers should remain assured of the fact that this will come with railroads, this will come with some level of modicum of controls, which banks like us will exercise.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at another emerging market country and their experience with P2P financing and how RBI has protected us to a fairly large extent, your point is well supported. So just one more question related to what you mentioned. There has been a lot of discussions that have happened in the recent times around the status of cryptocurrencies and RBI's role or stance in relation to that. But we have to kind of dissociate the technology with this particular application of the technology. And I understand that in 2021, Federal Bank started a consortium, but joined a consortium of banks and started a company which was looking into this blockchain technology. So if you can just quickly tell us about what are the possible applications that you're looking at in as far as blockchain is concerned. And if you can also please talk about the bank's viability almost in a scenario where cryptocurrencies are being issued by the central bank themselves. Yeah.
So I think on the first part, which is on blockchain, which is the underlying technology, the jury is still out on how much of benefits it will deliver, but clearly there are opportunities from a blockchain perspective where there are, as I'm sure the audience and where there are multiple parties involved and there is a lot of toing and froing that happens between the parties. There's clearly benefit in looking at what blockchain can do. So the company that you mentioned has been formed by a few banks put together with Infosys as the kind of holding us all together as the technology partner. The experiments currently are around what can we do in the trade finance area. So for example, in trade finance, both domestic and international, but to start with in domestic, there's a lot of steps before you can issue a letter of credit, before you can issue a guarantee, before you can discount a bill. There are lots of steps involved because lots of checks and balances have to be done. So the bank issuing the LC, the bank discounting the LC, there are multiple banks involved. So how do you get a trustworthy platform like using blockchain where everybody can kind of see what is happening? There's transparency in doing it. So that's the area where this company is working on. It's a little bit of a long drawn process because you've got to get everybody on the platform and then start working with all the partners. But as I mentioned, the RBI Innovation Hub is also doing some work in this area. We do believe there are good use cases for blockchain and things like trade finance in anything to do with mortgage lending, for example, because when you lend for the purchase of a house or you lend against a house, you need to go through a lot of processes to secure that the bank needs to go through to secure and make sure that the property is kind of duly mortgaged to the bank. It's complex, it's still paper-based. So how do you kind of use blockchain for that? So these are experiments, but I think it's a few years away before we'll really see the true benefits of blockchain in India. We ourselves did one experiment on blockchain. We did a remittance arrangement with a partner in the Middle East on blockchain, and we was able to scale it up. Having said that, it was a bilateral kind of a blockchain arrangement. It helped on reconciliation. But honestly, because we evolved on our API technology so much, we do believe that APIs kind of served the purpose. We had just experimented with blockchain in that. To your second question on CBDC and what happens, etc. I think there's not enough clarity. I think RBI will come out with some more clarity on it. We do, the general view is that CBDC will probably be more as an investment rather than a mode of payment, more of an asset class is probably where it is. In that case, yes, we do believe there will be risks because, typically customers may choose that in lieu of choosing a fixed deposit or a mutual fund. But again, we have to wait and watch on this. Customers themselves will take some time to learn about the product and understand the product. So I think, we just have to wait and watch actually.
So that's really kind of sums it up nicely. Ms. Shalini, I'd like to invite Professor Sebastian to give the thank you note. I wish we had more time to spend with you. There were so many
I understand. Yes. I'm sorry. I know we're running short of time, and I can see a lot of questions that have come up in the chat window. What I can offer is, if if somebody can pull out the questions and send it to me, I can work on at least giving a written response over the course of the coming week. Yeah.
Sure, we'll do that. Professor Sebastian, on to you.
Thank you, Professor Kambar. On behalf of the Center for Digital Innovation and Transformation, IIMK, let me thank Ms. Shalini Warrier, Executive Director and Business Head, Retail, Federal Bank, for sharing her wonderful experience and vision on the challenges and opportunities in digital transformation in financial services. And she was particularly mentioning the need for both learning and unlearning in digital transformation, because a lot of things to be unlearned, then only new things could be learned. And it's according to her, it's learning almost every day, new things every day. And she's also stressing on the need for reverse mentoring. And also something she was indicating that to drive digital transformation, people should have a questioning attitude. So the mindset of the people are to be different for driving that. Then the involvement of all the employees are needed, and the use of artificial intelligence at the back end that makes the bank agile and dynamic. And the use of or the opportunities with blockchain also she has mentioned. And digital transformation should not be done for the sake of going digital. That may not yield fruitful outcome. So no half-hearted attempts would be successful. So on the whole, it was a very wonderful session. Thanks once again, Ms. Shalini Warrior. And let me thank Professor Joffe and Professor Kambar making the session wonderfully well for setting the background, raising the most appropriate questions, and also for very nicely concluding the session. Let me thank all the participants also for your enthusiastic participation. And let me thank Professor Pillai also, who is the chairperson of the center, for his dynamic leadership in organizing the event. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a great evening ahead and a great weekend. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good
Wonderful
weekend.
time with you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.